All right. We're back with another episode, but first the sponsors, head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. Go check out all the sponsors. I want to thank Gallo Technologies for the walls behind us. Volquartz and Firearms, a mutual friend of myself and the guest today. We'll get to that. Rhino Metals, Right On Optics, Blackwater Ammunition, Galco Leather Holsters, Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. Monster Energy, we appreciate you guys too. And Microtech Knives. I'm missing somebody. Enforce Weapon Lights, we'll throw them in there too. All the links will be down below. Go check them out. Leave reviews if you haven't. I want to dive right into today's guest because he's really interesting to me. He doesn't know how much I've kind of dwelled on him coming in here because it's interesting. He's
Appreciate that.
DJ, entrepreneur. I got to hype you. DJ, entrepreneur, all around fucking, I'd say more than local, national celebrity, big time shit. I mean, this is big.
Well, local now in COVID world where I can't play anywhere else.
Right.
Totally local now.
That's what I mean. Yeah, and he goes by, well, his name's Justin. Can I say your real name?
Yeah.
All right, I know if there's like top secret G14 classified.
Could be.
Justin Blau you go by, right? Or is that the secret name?
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's only known to those who are closest to me, so.
All right. Wow. So this is now when DJs are choosing their name, how does that work?
So my story is kind of weird. I was in college. I was 19. And when you search Blau on Google, Blau means blue in German. So I said, let's do something different so people could find my music. Otherwise, they'd just see blue in German everywhere on Google. They wouldn't be able to find me.
Oh,
so
good. Wow, he's already thinking of SEO. This guy's right up my alley.
So I was thinking back then, this would be a great idea. Little did I know that it would turn into something that was this big. And so the three stuck, and now people say three loud, but it's okay because it's a conversation topic, right?
It's perfect. Yeah, but I don't want to get into like why your brain was already on SEO at that point in life. I want to get to, do DJs choose their name? Is there or does it choose you?
Oh, man. I think it chooses you. I think it does. It kind of comes to you and you're like, that's it.
That's deep.
In my case, though.
It was SEO driven. It was.
It kind of was, to be honest. I mean, I was thinking about it from a business standpoint. Like, how do I, at the time, Facebook had no limit on its distribution. So if you liked my Facebook page, you were seeing all my shit. And I was like, I want to get this out there to as many people as possible. There were no restrictions 10 years ago when I started. SoundCloud, Facebook, Google, post the shit up, make people hear it, and hopefully they like it.
Bro, that's progressive.
At the time.
Yeah, you were like light years ahead.
At the time it was. At the time, people were, signing record deals, doing all this stuff, and I was like, screw it. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to upload stuff to the internet and hope people like it. And it turned out they did. So that was very lucky. Very lucky.
Did you care if they sucked? Were you like, fuck it, I'll just rewrite the script and do something else? I guess you have to want to keep trying. I try to tell people this all the time with podcasting. Like, you have to keep fucking up. You have to be willing to fuck up.
I think that's the biggest thing. Like, being a musician, being an artist, being a creative, running a podcast, you have to be creative. You got to think about
learning,
what guests
growing.
are coming. Exactly.
Yeah, developing.
Telling a new story every time so your listeners are constantly excited. It's the same thing with music. There are inevitably, mistakes that you make, things that you try that don't work out, and hopefully you improve, and that's kind of the process.
When people come to you, are you like, do you have a temperature test to see if they're creative or see if they must come to you and be like, I got the mixtape. I want you to listen to it.
Oh man, it's really tough. The amount of people that are like, oh, can I get your ears on something? I'm always super respectful.
Sure.
I'm always super respectful. If someone else opted in, if someone else was like, hey, this kid's really good, you should listen, then I'll listen. Right. But if it's just someone randomly self-promoting, it's hard to weed out the good stuff.
I'll always say this, that people come to me and they'll say, I want to do a show. This is kind of my gauge. And I'm like, I've done, between this show and other shows, I've done almost 400 of these. So I have a pretty good idea, you know what I'm saying, of how to build out a set, how to make it work, and how to make it fun. And, I have a little bit in here of like the green room, fun room scenario.
Yeah,
so it's different. It's a step up from doing it in your mom's basement. So I ask people all the time, I'll say, what do you want the show to, tell me about the design of the show. Like, what's your scaling and everything else? And then I can get an idea if they're creative or not. Because if they say, I want to talk about my experience fishing. And I'm like, well, it's not going to work. And they're like, well, why do you say that? I'm like, because you have to think of podcasting or music or being creative as a little bit like the show Seinfeld or Friends. It can't have a beginning and it can't have an end. it's
just got to
endless.
flow.
It's just got to flow. So like you write material, I'm sure that you're like, what the fuck am I? What is this? What is this? Where is this going? But that's part of it. You know what I mean? It has no. And I do a show, and people say, "What's the show about?" I'm like, I don't know, whatever.
Well, that's what makes it interesting to someone else, right? It's stream of consciousness. People want to be in your head. They don't want to feel like you planned out a conversation. That's not fun.
And just like you can't plan out music, I imagine, right?
You can't. Sometimes the best shit happens when you have no expectation of it.
Yeah. Do you ever listen to anybody else's? You brought up listening to other people's stuff, so I'm going to go there. But
Sure.
have you ever listened to somebody's stuff and you think it's actually good?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Because you can tell me if most of it's garbage.
Well, you know, it depends. It depends. You know, it's a really interesting process where, you know, there are times where I'll hear something, and I'll be like, "Holy fuck, that's the one," right? And that's not often. I'd say it's like 1 in 1,000. But just like you know, you're doing 400 shows, whatever it is, 500 shows. You know, I'm listening to, you know, maybe.
Did we lose the audio? The audio dropped. Hang on. There might be something with that cord. Hey, Marcy, you mind tripping that breaker on that cord? Just unplug the fridge. Something's tripping on it for whatever reason. You know what it is? It's a little technical snafu. It might be one of these. Go ahead. You gotta just flip the breaker on the big one. Just do that now. Let me know when it's red. Yeah, it's back. Should be back. Sorry.
There we go.
Little malfunction, people. Nothing we can't handle. But you know what I think was doing it? It might be the fridge. But anyway, so. Yeah, you kind of listen to a lot of material, you go through a lot of stuff, and you're constantly, you know, banging. You go through these like periods where you're willing to dispense endless amounts of advice and input to people, and then you go through these periods where you're like, you just want to be in your own world and in your head, I imagine.
Yeah. I have to be focused on, you know, what I'm working on, and it's pretty tough, right? Because the world, you've got 6 different chat applications. You've got Telegram, WeChat, WhatsApp, iMessage, Facebook Messenger. And I'm constantly having to juggle communication and email, juggling communication with everyone who's important, and simultaneously shutting all that out so I could be creative in my space, shutting out social media so that I can come up with something that's really unique. It's really hard to balance that, right? Because I'm managing the business side, but also, you know, I got to flick on the left brain and let it work sometimes. So it's, quarantine's been kind of interesting in that sense, where I'll just take a couple days of the week where I just won't respond to anyone.
Right.
And people will get pissed. I'm like, listen, I gotta make music.
So how does it work making music with the money side? Like, was there any, like Kanye was, I know it's Kanye, but like Kanye was saying, you know, like there's no money in the music industry anymore and these contracts and fuck these.
He's right. What's really interesting is, for me, he's right if you signed a bad deal. And most artists do sign a terrible deal early in their career. Record labels, you know, to kind of give you the very quick version, I don't want to dwell too much on this. Record labels serve 2 purposes.
Scoop.
Liquidity for an artist who wants to pursue their dream. They need to be able to survive. They need to be able to live a certain lifestyle. So the label gives them the funding to live the lifestyle they need to live while they get creative, right? That's part 1. Part 2, distribution. Label has marketing mechanisms. You know, back in the day, it was the record store, right? The shelves in the record store. That's completely changed. You've got TikTok, you've got social media, and you can raise money from a lot of other places that aren't just a record label. The problem is the record label is so unfavorable. Most of the time, they take 80% of the profit, and that's before it gets split between your manager, the other artists that make the song. So you're left with 20%, and then you got to split that off in another 40%.
Is that
different
real?
direction? It's terrible, right? So this is how the business has been. But because I have a finance background, when I started my career, I never signed that deal. So I keep the other side of that. I keep 80%, if not more, of the music. And now, since Spotify kind of has started to generate a lot more money in music than ever, than music ever was able to generate by itself. If you own your own music, you actually can make a lot of money. The problem in Kanye's case is he signed a lot of bad deals back in the day.
Right.
So he doesn't own all of his own rights. But then you've got someone like Russ or Chance the Rapper who own all their own shit. They're killing it. Right. So it's just, how do we encourage the next generation of creatives to not sign those predatorial deals?
Of course. No, it's big for all of us. I try to explain this to people, not just in business, but even in the gun world. A lot of them get into these deals where they'll work for free. Like, they'll work for a muzzle brake. And I'm over here like, what are you doing? We need people to rise up and make more money, because it's just like baseball. If A-Rod signs a $100 million deal, it helps me go sign an $80 million deal, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of what you like to see. So I'm all for everybody making a lot of money, and I'm all for, especially in creative world, like when Joe signs that deal for $100 million, that's huge.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Everybody wins. So, especially since Spotify's stock went up and the owner made $480 million in one night. So it makes him look like a genius. Everybody looks good. So, of course, COVID, exacerbates the creative process and makes everybody kind of go internal and start racking their brain and looking for new and exciting ways to create. And I think it's caused this boom in the recording streaming business, and I think it's going to continue to cause a boom. Now, yes, of course, you and I both know, and this is important to me, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to come out of the woodwork and want to create and think like, I can make money doing this, and then they end up on OnlyFans for but
well, not everyone has it. I don't want to be that naysayer, but it does take a certain personality, and it's not just the creativity, it's how do you channel the creativity. In your case, you channel it with a podcast, right? That's you can bring a lot out of another person in conversation, and that's your talent, right? My talent is making music, and other people sometimes they have a lot of creativity, but they don't know what direction to put it in,
right?
And so they try a lot of different things, and they're like, oh, this is really good, and maybe it's not, so try something else. But people sometimes they're too narrow-minded to try something else, right? They might be really creative, but they might not have just found the right medium to express that creativity.
How'd you find yours? Were you just sitting one day listening to like records or something? Do you have like a cool story?
Man. So, no? It's kind of funny. So my story was I was in finance. I was going to go work for BlackRock Asset Management.
Of course.
And that was my dream. My dream was to make as much money as possible until I was 40 years old, check the fuck out and make music for the remainder of my life. And that happened in the opposite direction, where I was in college making music. Things went viral on the internet. I couldn't control it. And I was able to capitalize on that opportunity at a time that dance music was still pretty young in America. It was obviously big overseas, but this is right around the time Avicii started to get really popular. And I just saw this moment, and my economics professor actually convinced my parents to let me drop out. It was a really funny story there. And so then I applied all my business knowledge to my music career, and it's been a decade since.
And you never really, what's funny is, in researching you a little bit, you always stay true to where you are. You always you're from here, you're here. It's like you never kind of became one of those people that's like runs off and like you're in London for 2 years finding yourself. Or
I do love the beach. I won't lie. I do love the Caribbean, but other than the Caribbean, Vegas is such a special place. It really is. I mean, we've got the beautiful mountain desert right behind us, and part of not to go sideways here, but I didn't even know it existed. For so many years that I was touring, I lived here, but I didn't know how much beautiful nature there was around us. And one of the things that I've enjoyed in quarantine is actually just getting out in the desert on a UTV and shooting. That's been such a stress reliever for me. And it's something that before quarantine hit, I never had time. I was always moving around. I was always on a plane. I'm not checking luggage with firearms with me wherever I go. It's just not practical.
Now, is that something, when you get into things like the outdoors and shooting, something usually triggers that, right? So usually there's exact moments in life, a lot of times I have people in here, they'll tell a story about being abducted. Is there something that like triggered this in you, or is it just to get outside?
Yeah, a couple things, I think. So I, not to go too far back, but little quick background. One of my friends, Justin Michaels, owns a range here in town, Strip Gun Club.
Yep.
And a couple, I had shot there a couple, like at least 10 times throughout my life at different times, but never really owned a firearm. Just really enjoyed, loved the science, loved the experience, right? And then COVID hits, and crime rates go up, and more particularly, everyone knows the BJ Baldwin story. And BJ lives down the street from me. I actually don't know him personally, but we have a lot of mutual friends. And so that story kind of woke me up to say, hey, I was living in a building for a really long time in a condo tower. Never really had the need to own a firearm at the time. Never really thought about it. Then when I moved into a home, I realized, damn, I have no idea how to defend myself. I have no idea. And if I'm going to do this, I better do it the right way. And that's when I took the deep rabbit hole dive and, spent, at least 6 hours a day doing research,
Right.
watching Top Shot, doing all these different things to learn.
What did you come up with in that research? I'm curious. What did you come to before you talk to anybody? Like, what was your I need to go, because most people, when they do a ton of research, and I know he's going to laugh back there, they end up being you know what we need? We need a SCAR 17 and for a home defense weapon. What did you come up with at first?
I came up with, I need the right training.
Oh, it's a good answer.
Didn't really matter what weapon it was. That was kind of what I came up with, because I'm watching these videos and
you're 50 times smarter than everybody else and already ahead. You've already won. You've already won.
So what's funny is I really have I purchased my first firearm. This is kind of crazy in June. That's
not crazy.
Which is recent. But again, I've been touring. I've been on the road. I loved firearms in the past. Never really understood them. And in June, which is so recent, first thing I did was sign up for a class here in town. Or actually, it wasn't in town. The first class I did was up in Utah. It was in Camas, Utah, with Archon Ready Group.
Mm-hmm.
And from that first class, I realized how little I knew,
right?
And how it had nothing to do with the firearm at all. It was all technical. It was all practice, repetition.
You're not
timing.
alone. 5 million other people went out and bought guns at the same time as you. So,
oh my God, it's crazy. I mean,
it's wild.
What is it? It's probably record-breaking sales this year.
100%.
100%. And so you've got all these people with guns that have no idea how to use them,
right?
And that scares me. That scares me a lot more than anything else.
It's a very it's a skill set that is perishable like anything else, like your jiu-jitsu, your judo, your MMA, and it really is a martial art. So the first thing I try to always explain to people is it's a martial art, and all fighting is a management of distance. It doesn't matter if it's shooting, if it's kicking, if it's striking, it's all a management of distance and understanding the scenario and what's applicable and what's required. And I think when people you're a bright guy, so you're way ahead of the curve. You brought up training. I think when people seek out training, they have to start to immediately gravitate towards the type of training that I think is going to help them the most in their environment. So I try to explain it to people all the time. It's great to go out and put the full battle rattle on, the kit, and do the costume and everything else. But that's the equivalent of me being like, hey, Justin, teach me how to mix music, and you putting me out in a club somewhere. It's right. A big stretch. I try to tell people, start simple. Conceal carry from a concealed position or from a tabletop, scenarios that you think are real. And I tell people the same thing all the time. If somebody kicks in your door, they're not kicking your door in to be nice. They're kicking in your door to rape you and kill you. And that's the real reality. So what's your plan for that? I mean, I got booby traps everywhere in the house. But that's what's your plan? How does that play out? And you get a lot of questions, obviously, always around, people that don't know how to stage a firearm in the house. I'm like, well, where are you most of the time? Most people say either the kitchen or the living room. So that'd be an ideal place maybe to stage something, especially if you don't feel safe. And this is a scary time. And I can totally understand why you sought that out and why that made sense to you.
Yeah. And it was something that I just knew that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it right. Right. I wasn't just going to buy it and put it away, because as you know, the difference of a split second can matter so much. And that's when, I actually, the funny story after that is I befriended, I hadn't really posted anything about firearms on social media because obviously a lot of my fans might find it contentious. I didn't really give a fuck, to be honest. I didn't. So I started posting about it, and I realized that there were so many people in music that actually
I think
firearms.
I was going to bring that up too. I think the music industry is a little further along than Hollywood is per se.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think in the music industry, I can rattle off a lot of I won't name them all here because I know a lot of them have posted or talked about it, but I can think of 5 off the top of my head that are hardcore.
Yeah. So funny,
Post Malone being one. Yeah.
So great you mentioned. So funny enough, the guy that makes all of Post Malone's custom 1911 2011 pistols, Infinity Firearms, wearing the hat.
Mm-hmm.
I just followed them on Instagram. Brandon, I followed their account because I thought their 2011s looked freaking sick.
Yeah, they're nice.
And he DM'd me back. He's like, dude, I've been a fan of your music for so long. I make a lot of firearms for hip hop guys, but I've never made a firearm for a DJ.
Right.
You should come out to the factory and do the Infinity experience. And he hooked me up with, distributed price pistol, so that I didn't have to spend the wait time of 8 months. He hooked me up with something in the short term that I could practice on. He sent me a 2011, and dude, I just fell in love with this gun. I fell in love with the 2011. Flew out to Texas in a couple months ago, took the class, realized how much even more I sucked, and I just keep taking classes, and I thoroughly enjoy the fact that a lot of this technology hasn't really changed in such a long time.
Oh God, no.
And that's so fascinating, right? The basics of a firearm have stayed the same.
Yeah, we haven't had we were talking about this before. We haven't had a revolutionary change since polymer. Really, polymer has been the big change. I've put that out there enough, even on this show, to kind of rack my brain to see what we've had. I mean,
and red dots, polymer and red dots, right? I would say.
As far as the firearm itself, polymer is probably the biggest leap forward, and that's more of a weight reduction. And making it more of a concealed carry, easier to conceal carry as opposed to the old days when you had to have, a brick in your pants.
Yeah.
So, it's that's the biggest leap forward. It's just there's not a lot of revolutionary stuff that needs to happen to make something go bang.
Right. And dude, that's what got me. So as I started diving in, I love taking these things apart and putting them back together. It's like adult Legos, and
Erector set.
Dude, I was having the best time, and I found so many similarities in how I make music. I know that sounds kind of weird.
No,
but I did. There's a science behind making electronic music. There's a science behind every firearm, why things are a certain way, and that's why I grew more particularly fond of Brandon's. The Infinity 2011. It's just perfect. I mean, they added recently an extractor that's built into the breech face, so there's no extractor rod at all. It's just built in, and I was like, how do you come up with this stuff? Like,
yeah, people. So when people get into firearms, they usually run the gamut. Well, they'll buy a whole bunch of stuff, and they'll play around with a bunch of stuff. Then everybody always comes back to the basics. And
that happened to me, man.
They buy everything. They buy everything that isn't nailed down, and then they end up with a Glock 19, a Glock, maybe a 26. Now they have the 48. They have subs, and they have different subcompact 17. They end up somewhere there. They end up with like a basic shotgun because they just want something simple. Maybe it's an 870 like I got up there, or a Beretta. They end up with something simple. Then they usually end up with the standard, simple, chopped down AR-15. Really, after they get the Gucci one, they come back and they get something simple. A nice 10.5-inch pistol. You're good. You're cruising.
Dude, that's You're
those are all your
naming it all.
go-tos. The only caveat I add to that is everybody does develop. It doesn't matter who you are and how far along you are. You develop a love for some particular type of platform that you love it, right? So you might love 2011s. I love lever actions. At heart, I'm a lever action guy. 45-70, stuff like that. But I grew up watching Westerns. Right. And that's what I love.
Yeah, man. No, it makes sense. I guess I kind of got pulled into these race gun videos on Instagram of kids like Christian Saylor, who, won 2 years in a row, the USPSA Open. And like, I'm watching these guys run and gun and change mags, and they're moving so fast. And I'm like, I want to go fast. And that's what got me into it. But, just like you said, it started out by me buying a bunch of shit that I didn't need, and then gravitating back to a couple things.
That's it. And that's part of the fun of it. There's a lot of fun in that, and you'll bounce around and you'll try a lot of different. This all happens, just so everybody listening understands, and I know you're all laughing listening to this, especially in the gun industry. We all know that this happens in about a 3-month span. It literally happens over a 3-month span.
You're right.
Because you'll just go and you're buying all kinds of stuff, then after a while you're like, what am I going to do with this thing, whatever this is, this Colt Python? This
yeah, dude, I bought the perfect example is that I bought a
Eagle.
5.7 PS90.
Yeah,
like what the fuck am I gonna do with that now? Nothing. I'm not
Nothing.
gonna do anything with that. But it looks cool. It looks cool on the wall, know. But yeah, you're right, dude. Like I had that 3-month period, but even while I was buying stuff, I still knew the importance of training, and more particularly training with the 2011 and training with the AR-15. Right.
Yeah.
That was to me the most important thing that would push me forward, and also taking these things apart, understanding like how impactful a trigger can be, right?
The functionality, yeah.
Like a trigger can matter so much. I mean, the Geisley SSAE is in all my AR-15s now, and it's a different shooting experience from one little. To me,
there's nothing better than the Geisley.
Really,
I don't care what anybody puts out. The Geisley. I mean, Timony makes a nice trigger too, and no one paid me to say that to the social media gods out there, but it's true, but you do that. It is kind of fun doing that whole gamut, because I can remember like just even going through my stuff sometimes and being like, do I really need this Desert Eagle? Like, is this completely necessary? Do I really need this? And it happens, and that's part of the fun of the journey. And then you just want to always make sure the training becomes so critical, because you don't want to be just a collector.
Right.
You have to decide, people say all the time, well, it's easy for someone to say that has the money to go train. You can train in your house. You can dry fire. You can do so many different things to build up that acuity to get better. And it's similar to like even like whether it's podcasting or music. I tell people, start with what you have. If all you have is X, start with X. If all you have is a cell phone, start there. And then you'll, get better and you'll start to understand. And there's always people willing to help you out, whether it's the person that's the stud at the range that maybe can show you a couple things. And then when you master those, a couple more things, and you just
that was actually, you mentioned something really important there. That was one thing I found really interesting. As someone coming from outside of the industry completely, my grandpa was in the Israeli military a long time ago. Nice. So he has a little history with firearms and, kind of was the first person to really get me into it a while ago. But as someone coming in new, having zero knowledge, I was at first intimidated, like people thinking I'm a total noob, like I was intimidated to ask questions. But then I realized everyone wants to teach you. Everyone's like pretty friendly, wants to show you their knowledge and what they've learned. And that was really helpful.
You're 100% right. It's the hard part, and you probably saw this, Justin. I know other people in this room can speak on it. The hardest part is getting over the initial trip in the gun store. Because it's like a running thing around the industry. Like that first trip in any gun store, for whatever reason, FFLs are like hardwired and programmed to be like, what can we get you? What do you need? And to all the FFLs out there, they know I love them and I'm a huge advocate of the FFLs, but they have that like slight intimidation in the beginning. But once you get past it, it's literally 2 minutes of that. That once you get past it and you just say, hey, I'm new, like I'm just trying to figure out what I like, that's when they start to soften, and right away they'll be more than gracious to help you get over the hump. And that's the beauty of the business, especially on the training side. A lot of the trainers and instructors, they're sweethearts. I mean, they're great people.
Yeah.
And they're super helpful. And for the most part, they'll work with anybody if someone's willing to come into a class or willing to go to a class. It's that willingness that they look for.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And that's why, now I guess I've done 4 classes now in the past since June. I mean, that's a lot. It's like once a month, but honestly, I would go even more frequently than that. I love it that much. I think it's one of those things where
if you can find the ammo.
Oh, dude, so a little tip to everyone on ammo who's listening. There are a couple Reddit forums. If you're on the Reddit forums,
it's a major announcement.
Yeah, this is how I've been able to snipe some ammo lately. You program a little push notification in Reddit on like R9mm or R556. And they'll say it's live, and then you go to SG Ammo. As long as you get the order in within like 2 minutes. I've done it from my phone a couple times. I've gotten a bunch of 9mm for 30 cents a round, which nowadays is freaking great. And I've gotten a bunch of 5.56 for like 45 cents a round, which is also pretty great for now. And I'm just like waiting for the notification to pop up on my phone and sniping it.
Yeah, I'm working on getting about 10 or 15,000 rounds here myself. I'm working on something right now because I'm starting to run low, and I'm kind of empty when I'm on my last 10,000. That's kind of how I treat it.
Oh man, yeah. I'm probably not looking at that. I'm probably like 5,000, 5.56, and 5,009. So I'm empty compared to you.
Yeah, I'm hiding in the floorboards. Yeah, I mean, it's wild what's gone on. I mean, COVID and just kind of the angst around the industries right now has exacerbated this kind of situation where everybody feels like they need to run out and buy canned goods, ammo, anything that isn't nailed down. I just hope they take the same mindset as you and value the training.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that's where I hope at least, in the beginning, I definitely was more of the mindset of let's just buy everything. And then that changed really quickly to realize, I want to just work with what I love out of this collection that I've built of maybe only 20 firearms. And I realized really quickly that like at least 12 of them I might never actually use, and they'll sit in the safe. But even still, there's so many ways to train, and so many people, at least locally here in Vegas is great for that, right? I mean, you've got there's a lot of culture.
Well, if we
here.
keep this governor, it's not going to be great. But
well, that's true. I mean, and we can take that dive. I think that's part of the reason why so many people are buying up so much of the supply is because Biden is such a wild card. We all know that the previous AR-15 ban. We know what's possible. Will it happen right away? No, but like it's possible.
If you notice, firearms have been brought up more by the Republican side than the Democratic side during the campaign because the Democrats know how many new gun owners are out there, and it's kind of they haven't really peeled into those numbers and they don't know who they are. So they've been very coy. If you notice, they've been staying away from that topic.
Right.
And it's a dangerous one for them right now, because what you have going on is you have a lot of Democrats that have become pro-2A, and that's a dangerous thing. It's kind of like there are Republicans that are pro-choice. There's pro-choice Republicans. That's a real thing.
Exactly, yeah.
And there are Democrats that are now pro-2A. I guarantee it. In the 5 million new gun owners, there's a lot of Democrats baked into those numbers, and they're staying a million. They are running from that topic right now. It doesn't mean when they get into the administration. So what's been going on is, whether you're the NRA and SSF, all these different orgs, they're trying to warn people, like, don't forget, we're still dealing with the fox in the hen house here.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is going to be, I mean, what? We've got, it's tomorrow, right? Or wait, shit, it's tomorrow.
Well, we know tomorrow, though.
No. Well, it's gonna take a second.
It's going to take a minute.
I mean, man, what's so crazy to me, you know, I would consider myself libertarian more than anything else. I'm probably more libertarian than I am Republican. But then again, like, I don't really like associating myself with a political party, because I think that's kind of, you know, there's other, once you self-identify something, someone assumes you have the same opinion as everyone else, which is not true. Right. It's just not true. And as a musician, I like to stay away from politics, because my fans have political beliefs all over the spectrum.
Well, I think it's unfair when people say, you know, don't use your platform to promote X, whatever X is. But I say this with a caveat. If you do decide to go down that road, like The Rock famously came out and endorsed someone. And
wait, who did he come out and endorse?
Well, Biden and Kamala. So I don't want to get into it because it's very frustrating. I think ABC had a lot to do with it. I think there was a lot of pressure there on him. But the point is, I think once you do that, like, it's okay in these types of settings to be like, I believe in this, I believe in that. And I think your fans understand it on a certain conversational level. But I think when you start to project it and try to put it on people, like I see some celebrities, their whole page has become a shrine to...
Dude, that's my biggest thing is, you do what you want to do. I won't judge you for who you vote for. I'm going to vote for who I want to vote for. And just don't judge me.
One of the most disgusting ones I've seen, Justin, is like on Twitter, if you go to it, Dave Bautista is one of them. Dave Bautista is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, former WWE wrestler, and he's been in endless movies where he's profited off of guns, kind of like Liam Neeson, profited off of firearms, profited off of beating the crap out of people, right? Fair statement.
Sure.
And he conveniently now has literally converted his Twitter to a Biden, Kamala Harris, page. And I just... to myself, I kind of say this, like, it has nothing to do with, oh, I liked him or I didn't like, I really didn't have an opinion of him, but I just kind of, that's where I think you cross the line and you open yourself up to that type of retaliation. Absolutely. Like, supporting something you love music. There might be people out there that say, oh, music, fuck that. Or I might like painting, or I identify, and it's odd to a lot of people, very well with creatives. I love creatives because I'm a creative at heart. But I'm also a conversationalist. I think in the context of articulating your thoughts and explaining something, as long as you're putting it out there into the universe in a way that's saying, this is just what I believe. I'm not trying to force it on you. This is what I believe.
Exactly, man.
Is fair.
And my two, like, listen, I'm obviously a 2A advocate, number one. And number two, I think certain tax policies, especially 62% potential in California, eliminating capital gains benefits. I mean, these are disasters, right? And so everything else aside, those are the two things that personally, those two things mean a lot to me. 2A, taxes. Everything else is important. Don't get me wrong. Climate change, important. I don't know anything about climate change.
What do you think of the Ice Cube 50 Cent kind of thing where they came out and they...
What did 50 Cent say? 50 Cent said it's going to be 20 cents.
Yeah, no, he didn't openly endorse Trump. He didn't, right? He didn't. I'm getting the word from the top. He didn't openly endorse Trump, but he did say he obviously pushed down some of the initiatives coming from the other side. But I agreed with it. I think Ice Cube has taken the best stance on the whole thing. He's like, look, this is the guy in charge. I'm going to sit with the guy in charge. I'm going to learn. I want to see what they're putting out there, and I'm going to make a judgment on my own, And
Right. I think the problem is that people have become so judgmental of this
Cancel them.
It's insane. I mean, it's at an all-time high, I think, in my lifetime. And again, I'm actually somebody who, quick backstory, not to take up too much time, but I actually worked in Congress when I was in high school.
No way.
I worked as a congressional page on the Democrat side. And I hand-delivered a bill to Pelosi that was resolved the United States should establish National Corvette Day. So I deliver the bill, and I'm 16 years old, and I'm listening to these congressmen talk about, for 5 hours, talk about whether or not we should establish National Corvette Day. I'm like, the fuck are these people doing? So that kind of disenchanted me from politics. I actually wrote my college entry essay on how much I hated politics. I got in. That was great. But, I haven't voted in an election until now. And the reason why I voted now is because I think there's certain disastrous circumstances that people aren't even really thinking about that could happen if it goes one way. And, and that's where I'm like, okay, that's my judgment. And if you want to go another way, that's cool. But don't judge me. Like, if I vote one way, that doesn't mean I'm a racist. It does not mean that. You can't associate those two things. And that's what's been so crazy is I've seen people come out, and I haven't been I haven't been a huge political advocate on social media because I have this fear of being judged. But the reality is those who have come out supporting Trump for whatever reason have been just totally demolished.
Yeah.
And judged. And no one asks, well, why? No one says, well, why did you make that decision? It's not because they're racist. It's not because they're, bigoted or
xenophobic,
support white supremacy. Like, none of these things are true. It's just maybe the other guy really sucks. Right?
I think that was definitely the case with her. And I think, when he ran against Hillary, I think they hated her more than they hated him. And I think this time around, people have seen how the president and has handled a lot of these situations. And I do personally believe in his work and what he's doing. I can relate to him being a New Englander, and I'm sure you can as being a New Yorker, a former New Yorker. At the end of the day, he's a New Yorker. He's saying what's on his mind. He's saying what pops in his head, and that's going to offend people. But he scares a lot of people because he represents drastic, sweeping change. And I think we're living in a time right now of radical political correctness that's incredibly dangerous.
Absolutely. I totally
what
agree.
they're trying to create, Justin, and the issue that's popping up is they're trying to create a world where you're in this world because you're speaking to thousands of people. You're speaking to thousands of people, and you have to. It's your duty. This is what they want to impose upon you. It's your duty to make those 1,000 people happy. Well, that's not how life works, and that's where.
Can you imagine?
And yeah,
man.
If you upset someone by something you say, now, do people go out of their way to upset people, and that causes angst? Yes, that happens, and you're bringing it on yourself. But the reality is, if you say, I'll give an example. I'll pick on, you say, I'm pro-life. I just believe that, we shouldn't be killing babies. Okay. Well, that's going to offend people, and that's going to cause people some angst. But if you're coming out and you're saying it in a way that this is just what I believe, this is how I feel. We can't live in a world where people are they're not even willing to hear your story. You might say,
right.
Well, this was going to happen to me, but look at this beautiful son or daughter I have because of this. You can't turn around and tell people, well, you got to go. We got to cancel you. We got to put you in a closet and lock the door. And that's what they're pushing for. And that's a very, very dangerous thing.
It's a slippery slope. Cancel culture in general. I mean, it's
Karen culture, really.
It's inherently, what's so funny about Karen cancel culture is that it's literally anti-democratic, right? The whole
100%.
The whole purpose of a democracy is hearing everyone's opinion. And when cancel culture exists because someone wants to homogenize the universal opinion about something, I mean, that's a disaster.
And what should be terrifying to you as a musician and as a creative, and it would be terrifying to me, it is terrifying to me as a podcaster, is it's almost like if they can't control what's coming out of your microphone, they're mad about that.
And what's so crazy is you're seeing this on social media with Twitter and with Facebook. I mean, I think it's absolutely insane. So, I'm pretty close with another firearms enthusiast, Calion Noir. And we actually met in the class up in Utah. We've been staying in touch since. And, he was telling me about how Instagram shadow bans all of his posts. I mean, we give these social platforms control. They shadow ban things that are politically against their narrative. They shadow ban things, in my case, I'm a huge blockchain, crypto technology enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
If I use the word crypto in a post, shadow ban. They think I'm trying to scam someone. I mean, it's pretty wild that they have this much power. And now with, I don't want to go too deep, but with some of the political circumstances that have been censored, it's insane that they're getting away with it. They're getting away with it. It's insane.
You want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, in my opinion, they're setting themselves up for some kind of regulation.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what
I think that's where it's going.
I think it's coming down the pipe so
glad
quick.
you said it.
I mean, they've died on this hill of the political spectrum. That's everything that's going on right now, and they're just up on this hill, and they're like, nope, we're going to die on this hill. We're going to block you. We're going to block them. We're going to shadow ban this person, and they're just going to do all this stuff. Everybody sees it, but what they're doing is they're setting them. Even though they're private companies, they're setting their platforms up to be regulated.
They should be.
Did you see the Dorsey video?
I actually agree. Okay, wait, let me back up. I saw the Dorsey video, but I don't think Dorsey's the worst. I think Zuckerberg's worse.
Oh,
I think Jack, and I'm not saying this to defend Jack. I think Jack does have some rogue agents working at Twitter because I think Jack spends I mean, if you know what you know about him, I think he's off like a Cameroon.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He doesn't.
Right.
He's you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think he's. To your point, I think he's basically ceding control of his company to everybody in there, and they're doing whatever they want.
Sure.
I don't think Jack likes being hauled before Congress, and I think he is going to go through that building with a flamethrower. That's the hope, and fix some of it because he does see Twitter wins when both sides battle. So,
right.
So
I see what you're saying.
Through the interaction.
I see what you're saying.
So if he's smart and he's half the person we all think he is. He's half the person I think he is, let me say. I think he wants to allow that Tower of Babel because that's the interaction. That's where the juice is.
Right.
I think Zuckerberg's a lot more dangerous because I think he's a manipulative, conniving son of a bitch.
Not to mention, he looks like Data from Star Trek.
Well, I'm slightly biased because I'm friends with the Winklevi twins. They're close friends.
Winklevoss guys.
Yeah. So I'm maybe biased against Zuck, but I think in general, what's so dangerous is this idea that not all voices are equal, and they're literally. I mean, a lot of super leftists say, "Oh, voices have never been equal. Our voices have been suppressed. Our voices have been suppressed," and yet social media is literally making it so that all voices are not equal if they don't align with the central narrative.
I think Democrats, by and large, have controlled Hollywood and the media for a very long time. So I think they have had their voices out there. I think where they fall flat right now is they're in an interesting conundrum. Their biggest voting blocks are their least represented.
Right. That's a very good point.
So, typical example, they end up with the old white guy candidate. Something that's always been accredited to the Republican side, right? They're the old white guys. The reality is they actually underrepresent and underserve the communities that they claim to want to be a part of. So if you love Hollywood, right, why would you raise taxes on them? Why would you tax California into oblivion?
Oh, it's a disaster.
So if you love having that as your... So basically, they're destroying their own base is what they're doing.
It's so fascinating. Illogical. It's fascinating to me because as someone like this country was founded upon the principle of small government, letting people do what they need to do as long as there's no negative externalities, right? As long as there's nothing negative that happens from one human being's action, a human being should be able to do whatever they want to do. That's what our founding fathers said.
Freedom. Pursuit of happiness.
Literally what made this country the greatest country of the world. Mm-hmm. Now we're in this time period where Americans are so self-hating. And it's really surprising to me because we still live in such an incredible country, a country that enables someone like me in college to use the internet to grow a career and someone like yourself to speak your mind on a podcast and say whatever the hell you want to say. We're not, it's a special place. And there's so much self-hate now that, it's concerning.
It's incredibly dangerous with the pronouns they want used, with how they want to structure people's lives, how they want to have that control. And here's what I said to somebody that had a little bit of a dissenting opinion to mine. I said, this was over dinner not long ago, I said, have you ever seen the government take a regulation back? So I said, you have to understand it's a dangerous, slippery slope, and it affects a lot of us. And I think you have a lot of people, like you take the Biden thing with Hunter Biden. I know people that's legitimately have said they don't care about the Hunter Biden thing, right? Like it's not Joe, so they don't care about the Hunter Biden thing. And I say to them, but do you understand that he may, we don't know, alleged, the evidence, where there's smoke, there's probably a little bit of fire, but he may have been selling influence to other companies. And do you understand what that means? Like, but you go to somewhere like Chicago, New York, Boston, where corruption, we grew up with corruption our whole lives, aldermans, everything, you know what I mean? City council. I mean, that's, you don't get more corrupt than that, the borough executive. I don't have to tell you, the borough guys, you were robbing money for years in New York, but people are just like, yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's
like,
selective. It's selective hearing. People have selective hearing, right? They let the things they want to believe. They hear the things they want to believe, and they tune out the things that maybe they should be listening to, but don't align with their existing opinion.
So dangerous.
And my philosophy is with everything, with every belief. I have a lot of strong opinions, but they're all loosely held. If there's something I don't know a lot about, I want to learn from another person in conversation. I might have an opinion. My opinion could totally be wrong, right? And that's cool. Most people don't even want to have the conversation.
I'm always willing to have a debate with people. Just this is my criteria, and I've talked about this on other podcasts. I'll debate with you, Red Sox and Yankees, right now. But here's the deal: we can only use facts, and I take the same approach whenever. So we can lay out on the whiteboard that I got behind me all the facts about the Yankees, all the facts about the Red Sox. I can still tell you why I love the Red Sox and why I think they're a darling Cinderella team. But you're going to come back at me with the facts of how many championships and everything else. But the problem you run into today in the culture we have, I'm not a part of the millennial generation per se. You don't have a millennial mindset, so I can't go there with you, is if they can't win the argument, they want to burn your business down and light you on fire.
Right.
Not literally, but even figuratively.
But you're right. I mean, that is my generation, and I am a millennial by the, what is it? It's 86 to no. What are the years for the millennial? It's
we need an official
81 to 96. I think it's 81 to 96. I'm 91, so I'm towards the latter half of that. And my generation, I think, I'll say this: a lot of people maintain these small minds because, number one, they haven't seen a lot of the world, so they don't know just how bad it is in other places, and we can go there in a second. Number two, they're in their own bubbles, and they're surrounded by the same people all the time. And not to give myself too much credit, but I have traveled to a lot of places, seen a lot of crazy shit. Like not many people have been to Jakarta. Okay, Jakarta, Indonesia is one of the most fascinating cities I've ever been in because you have malls that are filled with designer products, designer stores. Right. These malls are completely empty, and they're right next to the slums. Like within 10 feet. You've got kids playing soccer, getting almost hit by cars at all times, and then you have this designer mall right next to it. It's frickin' dirty. Quality of life is shit for most people, and yet they get by. They figure it out. There's a huge wealth gap in Indonesia, insane wealth gap. And I haven't been to India, but I've heard it's similar in India. I've been Guatemala. I've done some charitable work in Guatemala. I've been a lot of places. We forget just how amazing we have it here. And then I hear people online complaining about specific things. I'm like, man, you just don't know. You just don't know how great we have it here. People complain about inequality, and inequality exists 100%, but no one knows just how bad it is everywhere else, right? And how much progress we've made over the years. And so, my feeling is whatever we can do to battle inequality, we should do 100%, whether it's income inequality, class inequality, racial inequality, all that, gender inequality. We should combat all of those things 100%. But people forget that it's actually better here than it is in most other places.
Why do you think that is? Is it failure to educate properly? Is it happening at the college level? Is it?
I'll give a really contradictory answer to that question, but I actually think it's capitalism. I think capitalism is an equalizer. Most people disagree with me on this. I think free markets are an equalizer. because the reality is free markets associate value with different groups, whether like, and ultimately whoever provides the most value earns the most respect in a capitalist world. And what we've learned over time is that women are equally, if not better than men at a lot of fucking things.
100%.
And that's why this inequality that used to exist is slow. It still exists. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but it's improved. It's improved.
The suppression of men through, as I said, radical political correctness, the suppression of the white male, if I might put it as simply as humanly possible, and the suppressing of their ideas. There's swells of people that want to develop equality through a magic wand, but you have to ask yourself first, is there really an inequality, right? So there's always going to be, and this is why trying to stimulate equality through what I call, radical advancement or anything like that, it by and large, many women are going to always gravitate towards nursing. By and large, many women are going to gravitate towards certain careers. That's just a reality. Medical profession is one of them, where women excel. They do exceptionally well, and it's exceptionally flooded. But you don't see the battle drums being pounded to say, we got to make Justin a doctor. Like, that's what he needs to be. And that's a scary thing. And when we go down that road of trying to engineer equality, it becomes very dangerous.
100%. And I've always said the one thing the world or our country should do is level the playing field for everyone starting out. If you're growing up in a crap neighborhood, you should have access to great education.
Sure, opportunity zones, yeah.
Opportunity in general is what needs to be equalized, because at this point in 2020, a lot of other issues that have existed in the past, we haven't completely defeated them, but we've done a pretty good job. What's happening now is the starting point is different for different people, right? Because I'm a white male, I definitely come up. I start at a different starting point when I was born to a lot of other people. If we can get everyone to that same starting point, it's up to you.
And I'd argue that you're closer to that starting point than you ever have been in so many ways to other people, because of the suppression of. It's actually a stigma today to be a white male.
Have you heard? It is, and it's so and I'm a huge, like, when it comes to the civil liberties conversation, I'm very much pro a lot of those movements, minus the ones that dislike capitalism. We don't have to go there too much, but I'll tell you a funny story. Have you heard of this app called Clubhouse?
No.
Oh man, I'm gonna send you an invite. Clubhouse is an interactive podcast where you can join this app, and there are a lot of different people talking. You can either be a listener or a speaker. It's like think of a interactive digital panel, but without video. It's only audio. So there's no video clips. It's not like a panel in that sense. So there are a lot of really amazing people on there. Like John Mayer is on there. Eric Weinstein's on there. And I've had the privilege of talking to Eric a lot on this app. Basically, it's just this. You create a conversation topic. You can either ask to speak. The moderator will let you up, or you can just listen to other really smart people talking about stuff. There was this one room that was created on Clubhouse called Dismantling Capitalism. And it's this room is an anti-capitalist room on an app that just raised $16 million from venture capital, right? Like, just absolute paradox, absolute ridiculous paradox. So I go into the room. At first I start listening to what people are saying. Like, all the, people are talking about all the negative externalities of capitalism. Yes, there are a lot of negative externalities that capitalism has created, and that's where government should reduce those negative externalities, right? So I get up on to talk. I raise my hand to talk in the speaker section. I get brought up, and I say, hey guys, like, capitalism means private industry, or private companies controlling industry instead of government controlling industry. That's the very simple definition of capitalism. So when you talk about all these things, whether it's race-related, class-related, all those things, that's not capitalism itself. They're negatives that occur from capitalism. And then, to your point, long story to get to your point, the moderator booted me to the audience and said, I don't need a white man mansplaining capitalism to me. I was like, fuck. That was maybe the first time I experienced something like that in my life. I was like, I'm not talking about anyone's race here. I'm literally just talking about capitalism here.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. Then, funny enough, after that happened to me, a bunch of really, really cool fund managers in the blockchain tech world that I'm friends with, this guy who runs a big crypto fund called Paradigm, his name is Matt. he DM'd me. He's like, dude, that was so fucked up. That was so fucked up. And whether you're white or Asian or Indian or Hispanic or whatever, that's fucked up. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what no matter what your race is, you don't have the right to do that to anyone else. Yeah. And so that was one of these moments where I was like, damn, racism is real in every direction these days, unlike maybe I'd ever felt before. And all I want, like I said before, I'm blind to anyone's race. I want to listen to everything from everyone. I don't judge. And yet I was just judged. I was like, shit. It made me, in that moment, it made me feel a little angry.
I'm sure.
And so I'm like, damn, I wonder, while we all have to recognize, yes, as white males, we have historically had more privilege than any other race. It's also important to recognize that we are in a way more equal state of the world now. Mm-hmm. And doing something that's like that only worsens everyone's situation. So I guess I just wanted to put that anecdote in there because it was a personal experience that happened
it's engineering
last week.
Yeah, it's
and people were like cheering for it too. Other people were like, "Yeah, fuck that guy." I'm like, what? They didn't even know. In order to figure out that I was white, they had to click on my profile because my avatar was a cartoon character, so they wouldn't have even known that I was white. They must have dove deeper, and they're like, "Oh, fuck this guy. We're kicking him out."
Yeah, it's radical racial engineering, and it's trying to create a world, and this speaks to a greater point. It's the movement to create a world where the message is controlled, what you take in is controlled, and my mind's blown by how the media handles it, because I always thought at the very least, and it's a scary time because I always thought at the very least you'd have at least unbiased media, right? But you put on CNN today, and I did it the other day, and of course someone said to me, what the hell are you doing watching that channel? I put it on. They literally have the COVID death toll on there. It's like, what the fuck? Like, why don't we put the world war death toll? Why don't we put this? It's like you could put a death toll for anything up there.
You know what they call it? They call it disaster pornography.
Yes,
disaster pornography is literally everywhere, and it's so freaking dangerous because it prevents people from learning the things that they need to learn about the virus. It's like, this is how many people died.
It's been one of my things that bothers me and a lot of people about the gun industry. The gun industry sells through fear, and I've been banging the drum and battling with the powers that be in our organizations to say we need to have better narratives and better conversations than being like, we can't always be on the defensive.
Right.
We have to go on the offensive, to your point. We have to start to take more strides to educate people ahead of time. It can't be as the election, they're going to take your guns, so you got to do this. It becomes like fear-mongering, and you have to, it's a dangerous thing. You have to, and listen, I'm a huge fan of the gun organizations. I'm a huge fan of the NSSF, the NRA, the different groups that we have available to us. My issue is you got to do better. The media is everything. You have to do a better job. I think when I use the example all the time, when the MMA first came in, it was, what are these guys doing? They're beating each other to death in a cage, blah, 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 blah. Similar to like the club life, when club music came in. They're all druggies. They're on drugs. They say that the DJs are terrible. They should all die and they should melt. So what you have to do is create a better narrative than that. And I felt, and one of the reasons I started the podcast was one of the biggest disservices being done to the gun industry was social media, was that space, because at that time, especially, there's really wasn't enough video out there. There wasn't enough audio. So you didn't understand people's context of why they loved the things that they were doing.
Yeah.
So it was really just a picture of so-and-so with a gun. That can be painted in 100 different ways. Oh, they're a radical. They're crazy. But I felt like the best and brightest of our industry were awesome when they talked. And when you heard their story.
What's so crazy, man, is that so many people with opinions about guns don't know anything about guns. I think it's absolutely fascinating. And as a recent CCW holder, like I said, I only recently bought my first firearm in June.
Newly minted.
Definitely took the deep dive. As somebody new, I realized something really quickly. People in another Clubhouse room were talking about guns, and people were talking about warning shots, right? This, and as a CCW holder, your finger's not in the trigger guard unless you're ready to fucking shoot, right? And just the drastic amount of misinformation that exists between anti-gun and just educated gun owners. Like, we need to educate the other side of the table and let them know, the real facts about what's happening.
You want to chime in back there? You're itching.
Chime in.
Yeah.
No, I'll just say welcome to the CCW club.
Thank you, sir.
But I will totally 110% agree that the people that are anti-gun and talking about guns tend to know nothing about guns. There's still people out there today that think that you can just buy a gun off the internet and boom, it shows up at your house, which we all know does not happen.
Full auto.
Full auto.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't.
People also think that AR-15s account for a lot of deaths. Which we all know.
Or suppressors.
Or
Yeah.
any NFA item.
So
for that matter.
we live in a world. I joked with somebody once, and no, it's not a joke. I said we live in a world where everybody's running around with suppressed AR-15s, just murking fools. It's the furthest thing from reality.
Oh my God.
That you could ever imagine. Full auto, by the way. Sorry, I missed one piece. They're full auto. They're full auto. In their what are they? They use the military there. M16s. That's like when they really want to ratchet it up. It's a full auto M16.
The craziest thing is
AR-14.
Yeah, it's a
AR-14. The other thing that I always say is like, so, when you think of firearm deaths, people don't realize that like 60%,
if not more.
If not
they call them murder suicide.
And what's so when I tell someone who doesn't know anything about guns that statistic that 60% or more, and then I also say, oh, this was great. In the Clubhouse room, they were talking about the cops that got shot in where was it, Philly? And
was you talking about the one in Louisiana or Philly? Either one.
Shit, I forget.
The pedicab one was in Louisiana.
There was a situation recently where some cops got shot, and I was in the Clubhouse room, and they were all advocating, stricter controls on guns, making it more difficult to go buy a gun in the store. I said, how much you want to bet those guns that killed those cops were unregistered?
100%.
And I said, does anybody know?
And if they were, they might have been stolen.
I said, in this room of people, I said, does anybody know if they were registered? Dead silence. I go look it up. I know someone else looked it up. Yeah, they weren't registered. Okay, well, what's gun laws? What are gun laws going to do about that?
There's two important statistics you always have to back out of gun numbers. You always have to back out murder-suicide. You have to back those numbers out.
Right.
Okay? If somebody wants to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves. Okay?
Yeah.
You give them a gun, okay, they can use that. But they're going to find a way. So if somebody's suicidal, more often than not, they're suicidal, and the tool that they use to commit the suicide is irrelevant at that point. So the murder-suicide scenario has to be backed out. Secondly, you have to back out what they call like gang violence or gun-on-gun crime, right? Because that's something that it might be drug deals gone wrong. It might be scenarios where these two people are getting together and there was going to be a confrontation. So when you back those two numbers out, now what do you have left? You have school shootings. You have the things that, first-person shooter scenarios. You have, what we call domestic terrorist type stuff. It's a very small number. And that stuff usually makes the front page of the news. One is too many. Let me be clear about that. One is too many. But more often than not, when you peel back the layers and you start to really look at it, it's going to be a scenario where either one, that person had a major mental health issue or was a religious fanatic or was fanatical in some way. And we've seen this all through time, through history, for 1,000 years. This has gone on, okay? This has gone on for, we're not going to stop
History of humankind.
Humankind, where scenarios like this have taken place. What needs to be done and what needs to happen is there needs to be a better understanding of the data. And there has to be a better understanding of what's going on in that data and what's baked into that data. So I think one of the failures, if I may, of the firearms industry, and I'll be critical of my peers, is we have to do a better job articulating that data.
And
we cannot do it when we're on the defensive. We have to do it at times when, and it has to be laid out in a way that's idiot-proof.
Right.
Okay, it can't always be, and I'll tip my cap to Corleone. It can't always be somebody, one of our pundits like Corleone or one of our guys that has a lot of knowledge and can articulate a lot better, doing it after the fact. Okay,
it has to be proactive.
It has to be proactive.
I get it. I get that, man. And this is something. The stats really, the data matters. And when you really dive in, and I did this calculation myself because it's not in an article. I wish it was in the media. I wish there was a media piece that explains. I think that 6% total, or it's even less than that. It's less than 6% of the non-murder suicides that happen with firearms are with registered weapons. So 94% of all the other murders happen with non-registered weapons. So how can you prevent non-registered firearms from existing? You can't.
It's a very low figure. It's a very low figure at the end of the day. It's not a high number, and
Clark County did away with the registration. If you guys remember the blue cards back then.
Yeah.
John, you probably haven't been here long enough, but they used to make you register every handgun.
I heard all about it, motherfucker.
And I'm sure you did. And I'm pretty sure the sheriff told you that the program just was not a success at all. They didn't really have, I think I read in the paper they said they had like one major crime solved by it over all the years. One in like 11
Yeah,
years,
because I don't have to tell you where it ends and how they're trying to stop that through that type of legislation is what's the movie Minority Report? They're trying to get like a Minority Report, like this person could be the person, and that leads to doxing into a whole nother group of things. Now, what we're getting at is what one side wants to do is say we want to do away with all the firearms. We want to do buybacks. We want to do this, and that's not realistic, and that's completely never going to happen in America.
Out of control. I mean, imagine something like that happens, and then there's a bunch of break-ins, and people can't defend themselves.
I had Ed's manifesto here, and Ed said, you want to know what it's like to have open borders? Take the door off your house. And what I tell people all the time, you want to know what it's like to have to live in a world where we have no law enforcement, we have no firearms. Go to your house tonight. Dead serious. I'm not even being funny. Go to your house tonight and purchase a copy of Mad Max. I'm dead serious.
No, dude, I listen,
put it on
and
watch it very closely. A post-apocalyptic world that literally has reached the point where everybody's just running around doing what they want, and the only way to stop it is to be the person with the guns and ammo. Because tell me how that works, how that plays out. We've defunded the police, so now you have no law because nobody's there to enforce it.
You ain't got no
without
guns,
enforcement. Then. Without enforcement, laws are meaningless, right?
Right.
So what is the ideal world of the radical left, if I may take it there?
Rainbows and unicorns at this time.
The radical left has what we call extreme political correctness, no guns, and no law enforcement. It's actually worse than the movie Demolition Man. So that's a bad example.
Oh, man.
So you have Nancy Pelosi running around saying, what's your boggle?
What's your boggle?
What's your boggle?
Oh, man. I just... Yeah.
But tell me, am I lying? Because if I was sitting here right now and you weren't who you are, and all of a sudden for a minute you were AOC.
You know, what's funny about AOC, I watched the documentary about AOC. And as somebody who very much, disliked her prior, the documentary ended up showing me that she's actually quite articulate and smart, but totally misguided, I should say. So it's kind of one of those things where politicians like to use these unifying principles to get people behind them, but they very often fail to remember the practical side of what they suggest. Like, how is this actually going to play out? What's the logical progression of this policy? How are humans going to react? The issue with I think both parties at this point in time is they don't think about the consequences. They just think about what's going to appease people in the short term. They forget that when you eliminate long-term capital gains, that will encourage a culture of flipping and speculation beyond belief, because there is no difference between something long-term and short-term to an investor. The biggest thing as an investor is being able to lock up your capital and benefit from locking up your capital for a long time. If there's no benefit in the long term, what are you doing? You're moving it around. You're speculating. It could be an absolute disastrous circumstance, and people are like, they're not talking about that. People are talking about the wealth gap. They're not talking about how important capital gains tax or the capital gains benefit has been for the entire population who've worked really hard and saved money and invested for decades. You just eliminate people's entire life work. You tax in another 20%. People that have been holding stocks it's just a disaster. So anyway, I mean, look, I could go on and on about this stuff. I think you and I obviously align in our
Well,
belief systems. But
I'll say this: politicians can't turn their constituencies into petri dishes for their own political guidance, or what they think politically is going to be experimental, and we're going to try this.
Right.
You know, you have to sit down and you have to have a logical conversation. So I would ask anybody sitting on the left, as I said, if AOC was sitting right there, I'd say, okay, Congresswoman, you want to defund police. What does that look like?
Right. What's next?
So maybe that's half the field force, maybe that's a third, whatever. Let's get there. You want to do away with firearms. Okay. What are the consequences and what's the domino effect of that? And if you have to do that much social engineering, that much radical political correctness, that much convincing, that much changing of the Constitution, what does the end result of that look like? And along the way, don't you see the problem with that? That's like sitting there and saying, I'm going to engineer the citizen I want and not legislate the citizen that's mine now.
Yeah, people don't think about the consequences. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous, and I think that, you know, if we're gonna find out very soon how it all plays out, and I'm scared, man. I gotta tell you, I have no idea.
I know you're gonna do what I'm gonna do. You're gonna leave here and you're gonna batten down the hatches at the house, lock everything up twice.
I mean, dude, it's. I mean, this is, you know, not to change topics too much, but I mean, this is why I'm a huge advocate for people getting involved in the distributed ledger technology, crypto, blockchain space, because it's the first, you know, in the event of an absolute political disaster, financial freedom is going to cease to exist in a lot of ways. I mean, you know, my biggest, all 2A stuff aside, my biggest qualm with the left is their nationalizing corporations, this concept of taxing dividends and corporations. The government effectively owns more than 60% of the cash flows of every American company. I mean, these are the opposite principles of what made this the greatest country in the world. And we have no idea how changing that will play out in 10, 20 years. I mean, it could be, I mean, China could easily just overcome us as a global superpower if something like this happens. The incentives are misaligned. We've never lived in an economic world where these policies are even possible. And now they're just, you know, I don't want to dive too much into MMT and all this stuff. We could talk, it's a whole other conversation, but
it's another podcast.
It's another podcast, but printing money into oblivion isn't the answer. It's just not. It's just not.
How do we fix it?
Oh man, I don't know. I wish I did. Buy Bitcoin. That's how you fix it. I don't know.
Do you worry that Bitcoin or stuff like that is a nationalization of currency or a globalization?
So
I'm interested to hear your thought.
My quick pitch on Bitcoin, to keep it really simple. I'll give you the 3 reasons why, for the past 6 years, I've been such a huge advocate. Number one, global access to banking. So here in this country, you can open up a bank account, start a business very easily. In India, in some of these other countries, your government will print double the money the next day. Your savings are worthless. There's no means of storing value.
Right.
So one of the biggest value propositions of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general is global access to a form of a banking system, being able to store value in something that your native currency otherwise would be, you know, wouldn't be able to capture. Venezuela is a perfect example of this, where the inflation rate is just beyond belief, right? So forgetting the United States for a second, there's a lot of value to cryptocurrencies outside of the U.S. A global banking backend and infrastructure is super important. Number 2, value transfer. The fact that you have to pay to send a wire, the fact that you have to maybe sometimes wait a couple of days to move value around and you can't even do it on the weekend is preposterous. This technology that already exists, I could send as much money as I want to anywhere I want in the world with no restriction in less than in many cases, less than 45 seconds.
It's an interesting one because I can see one side of it where it's a globalization of capitalism, which is a good thing, right? But it's a dangerous one in that it becomes a globalization of currency, because that in and of itself can cause a whole plethora of issues because of the mess some currencies are in.
Absolutely. 100%. In many ways, it could be destabilizing to a lot of nation states. There's a lot of other ramifications of that are scary. 100%.
Yeah.
The third reason why I think this stuff is important is it eliminates middlemen in the financial system. All these people that are taking fees where they probably are undeserving, paperwork, invoicing, all that. blockchain tech completely eliminates the need for it. It makes transferring value instant, easy, contractable, and segmented as you'd like it. It's pretty fascinating technology, and the other governments, not the U.S. government's taken a pretty strong stance about the securities component of cryptocurrencies, but a lot of other countries are already innovating and doing amazing things, like in Korea and in Korea, Japan, Thailand, China is experimenting pretty heavily with this stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes. But for those who are worried about the result of this election and what to do, I would say buy Bitcoin. That's what I would say.
There's the advice. Breaking. Breaking news. Listen, I love a lot of your thought processes. I think you're spot on with a lot you're saying. It's refreshing. And I do think it's, the music industry is far more open in terms of people being willing to share their opinions, share their thoughts, okay with putting out there, because you guys have a good way about doing it, for the most part. And I think you're seeing a lot of folks strive to be not just educated. I mean, we see it now with Lil Wayne and with a lot of different personalities in and around the music industry. There's first seeking to understand and then seeking to be understood, which I think is the right way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, you just said it. Seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. That's how I feel about it.
And I think in Hollywood, it's become a Hollywood thing. I'm going to do the Hollywood thing. So yeah. I'm excited to see that. And listen, I mean, I hope you come back in.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd love to have you.
This was great.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back after this. I'd love to get your thoughts. I mean, I could go on and on. Let everybody know where they can find you, how they can reach you, and what's the best avenue to get in touch or hear your music or do anything.
Yeah, sure. So it's literally just 3LAU everywhere on Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. It's just 3LAU. You can Google it. And if you like dance music, you'll probably like my Spotify. If you don't like dance music, you might not. But I hope you enjoyed the conversation nonetheless.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I want to give a big shout out to one of our mutual firearms friends, Volquartsen Firearms. I think it's important to bring that up. I think what Scott's doing there is amazing. Just had Scott in, had a lot of fun with him and the crew, and I go way back with some of his team and some of his guys, and he brought you up and spoke very fondly of you. So I think he makes fantastic stuff, and go check out Volquartsen.
Oh yeah, definitely go check out Volquartsen. I just got 2 Mambas.
Beautiful.
Great tool to teach, my mom, my dad. Fun. It's really incredible. I mean, my dad shot my 2011 and then shot the Volquartsen Black Mamba, and he was like, wow, it doesn't move. I was like, yeah, that's what a comp will do on
that
a 22.
With a Trijicon RMR or...
Oh, it's the best practice tool. Teach your 8-year-olds how to shoot. No, I'm dead. I'm actually serious. Teach your kids. Because the reality is, if you don't learn, it's more dangerous.
100%.
That's 100%. The reality.
And I think you coming in and discussing this is the tip of something, because I really enjoyed the conversation. I think it's a harbinger of things to come. I think we should definitely do this again soon, for sure. And I think your opinions are spot on, man.
Dude, I appreciate that. And likewise, this was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. Go check out the list of sponsors. I want to thank Gallo Technologies. And by the way, Gallo Tech, I think Justin will be in touch soon, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Love the Gallo Tech. Looks awesome in here.
We'll get you squared away. And Rhino Metals, Blackwater Ammunition, Galco Leather Holsters, missing somebody, Right On Optics, Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. Monster Energy. Appreciate all you guys. Appreciate everyone. And I can't thank Justin enough. We'll put the links down below where everybody can go check him out. We are...